Okay, these notes on the pages aren't exactly clear. Alright, men who never seen death. Yeah, Allies outproduced Germans. Just kind of took some short notes. I thought things that are interesting. These parachute pigeons were eaten by the soldiers. Some soldiers. Towards the end of the war, I believe. Just talking about that. Hedgerows were some of the worst areas to fight. And when they got inland, Hobart's funnies has to do with the English, like tanks and all kinds of weird equipment they brought to the fight. Bangalore is a type of mine. That'd be interesting. I was just curious about it. What is it? It was used to blow up the barbed wire fencing around that was on the beach. Okay, I just finished reading this D-Day, and it's a thick one too. There's a lot going on in here. I'm not sure if I'll be able to cover it all, just thinking it through. Alright, but it starts out with talking about the run-up to D-Day a little bit with Rommel. You know, they wanted to set the stage for where Rommel was and all the generals were, and Eisenhower, where everybody was positioned. Americans were moving to England and training there, setting up for the war. Rommel was setting up the Great Atlantic Wall. There was a lot of political strife between Hitler and Rommel. Hitler thought that the Allies were going to attack in one part of France, the northwestern part, one part of that area, and Rommel thought different. There was a conflict in the German army between Rommel and a general. One wanted to fight more inland, one wanted to fight more on the beach. They were taking, and Hitler ultimately had the decision. He chose to be the person who made the decision on the political scale there with the military operations and stuff. And that's just how the fascist government worked. So a lot of times when they needed movement from the Panzer group to a certain parts of the beach as the Allies were attacking, they needed Hitler's approval. They were talking about how he was sleeping like a baby on D-Day early in the morning. They said he slept till noon. And so he didn't make his decision until much later, whereas Americans in the democracy with the military leadership, the lower level leaders can make decisions on the grounds a little bit more, which helped. All right. One thing that I thought was interesting, Anne Frank was alive during D-Day, and she wrote in her diary about hearing the radio. She was still in hiding, still listening to the radio. I thought that was interesting. I thought she might have died before even like an invasion like that, and it may show like how long the invasion, after the invasion, before the Germans gave in. A lot of casualties. They gave a lot of cigarettes away, and people were drinking alcohol. And on the boat rides over in the early morning, which was like 5:30 in the morning, they left maybe 3 in the morning. A lot of soldiers suffered seasickness, and some commented on how it would be better to die because they had breakfasts of like sausage and eggs or ham and lost it all. They talked about the smell and all that. There's a lot going on. It starts, you get like, it goes from one person to the next, practically. Alright, he'll paint the picture a little bit with Rommel and stuff, but he'll go from one person to the next, one guy's story to the next, and they just kind of like, they move between, each other pretty good. It's pretty neat. You'll get the perspective of the soldier on the ground, the Navy person, the Air Force person, even German soldiers, what was going through some of their minds. Okay, from interviews as far back as the 60s. I mean, he was bringing in. I mean, this book was written in the 90s, like 91 or so. He was referring to like Eisenhower interviews from 1960 something. 20 years after D-Day happened. This was written in 1994, so it's an older book. But I mean, you try to write a book like this and try to find people to interview, you ain't gonna really find anybody to interview. I had a friend who fought in World War II. He died at 91 now. He's dead. No chance to interview him. And after reading this book, I would have loved to have talked to him more, because he said he became a very religious man. He was a Navy guy, and I think he was fighting during D-Day. He was at some place. Everybody was in a particular place. Some people were in a more desirable place than others. All right, I mean, man, some of the survivors were shell shocked. There's a lot of injuries. They're talking about these 88 millimeter cannons that were dropping on the beach and just making people disappear. There was a lot of different things that could have gone better. All right, it sounds like, that we stopped using flamethrowers, and flamethrowers were clearly a disaster during the operation. Gliders were a disaster. Not being able to plan for these hedgerows after when they got further inland was a disaster. All right, there's things that they didn't see coming. All right, but also Germany had more blunders than America, and that's what helped win the war for the D-Day. How we were able to push back. Omaha Beach was the worst. All right, he talks about some beaches that the soldiers barely seen any problems, just a little sniper fire, but Omaha Beach was the worst. And a couple other beaches. The English also faced a pretty serious beach as well, of just getting shot up and having to walk over each other's bodies, and just pieces of bodies flowing in and out from the waves. And we're talking about the difference between low tide and high tide. All right, the Rommel predicted that soldiers would come in at high tide, but they came in at low tide instead. All right, and there was just a lot of problems with these LCVs. They were trying to bring tanks on with ships, these special ships to bring the tanks on, and these sailors just wanted to get the heck out, and they were dropping tanks far too early, and there were so many accounts of tanks going to the bottom of the water and just the soldiers popping up. All right, tanks being completely wasted. Some of these tanks had like water seal then they were able to drive it onto land, but that was very rare. This war, all right, on D-Day was fought mostly and won mostly by soldiers and not so much by the special equipment. As much special equipment was brought in, it was amazing. There's the accounts from even the French citizens, and then there's the black group. Just an amazing read. And it's nice to see like all the different perspectives. There's neat pictures in here. But one photographer lost like 100 photos because the developer was a little too hasty with exposing the photos and gave it too much light. Lost 100 photos on the ground. But I mean, there's a lot of footage. You can go to YouTube Live Leak and look at some footage of, I've seen this one recent one on Live Leak where an airplane had a camera, and you could watch it. It was swooping down and shooting German targets on the ground, and you can watch the camera and then watch it explosions on the ground. Is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's really fascinating. I learned quite a bit from this. Mainly about like soldiers. The best soldiers to bring to this type of war are ones that would have a sense of awe around them, and are just curious about things. They just never had any experience. Actually, would have been was the best kind of soldier. One who didn't have an experience and was in a sense of awe.